So today we're going to be looking at a scenario where the United States of America goes to war with every single country on Earth. That's right, we have a world map that looks like this for once. For all those people that get mad at me for making the US win every video, well, here's your video. The US is definitely going to lose in this one. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. This video is brought to you by my Discord server. If you want to join that, there's a link for it in the description. And let's get right into it. So obviously this is a very far-fetched idea. It's kind of hard to think about what would happen if this were to happen because it's so far-fetched. If any of you think the US is going to win this one, then this isn't your video. So let's just say that the UN, unrecognized countries, provinces, territories, and stuff like that, all declare war on the United States. In this scenario, the US is going to be playing defensive. I mean, obviously, they're going to try to last as long as they can, and I'm going to be trying to make this as realistic as possible. So at first, right after the declaration of war is sent, of course the US military is going to be sent all around the borders of the country. We have the US Navy stationed in the Pacific, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Atlantic, and the troops are being stationed along the borders of Canada and Mexico. I hate to say it, but if you're not in the contiguous United States, your state or territory is going to be taken out right away. If this were to happen, the US would probably definitely lose Alaska and Hawaii right away, and I think they would just probably focus on keeping the mainland safe. So the first thing to probably happen is the US Army being sent up into Ontario. I'd imagine that the US would want to play defensive, but they could probably use their logistics and figure out that if they could take out Canada, they would probably have a bigger advantage. So the US Army starts to sweep into Canada pretty easily. Now this is considering the fact that Canada's army is literally like nothing. US troops easily push into Ottawa and take the capital. From there, they start their invasion of Quebec, taking Montreal. While on the west coast, they start pushing into Vancouver and Vancouver Island, and take out the more populated areas of Canada. Now, this is probably the most amount of land the US is going to conquer, and keep in mind, I'm being pretty nice to the US right now. I think an offense into Canada would be likely, but then again, it kind of depends on who's in charge. The US may want to reserve their resources and not go into Canada, because if they did that, they would use a bunch of resources. Or they could just, want to wipe out Canada and then maybe move into Mexico and take that out. Either way, they're going to fall eventually, so it's whatever happens doesn't really matter. Meanwhile, on the southern border, Mexico and other Latin American countries start to push up into the US. Crossing the Rio Grande River, they start taking different parts of Texas. Meanwhile, up north, the US continues to take highly populated areas of Canada. At this point, every heavily populated area of Canada is under US control. Meanwhile, in the Caribbean, Cuba and other Caribbean nations take Puerto Rico with no resistance. Meanwhile, in the southwest, the US Army manages to cut off Mexico into two pieces, with mainland Mexico and Baja California being separated. Once again, keep in mind, I'm being very nice to the US right now. This isn't me being biased, this is just me trying to make the video more entertaining by allowing the US to actually gain some land. In the Pacific Ocean, the Oceanic and Asian countries may easily take over Hawaii. Now, Hawaii isn't on this map for whatever reason. I don't know why it's not, but we're just going to pretend that it's been taken over by the Asian and Oceanic countries. Over in Canada, European troops start to land and take back parts of Canada. New Brunswick is easily taken back and the push into Ontario begins. Meanwhile, down south, the US begins a pushback of Mexico. Over in British Columbia and Alaska, the US starts connecting its occupied lands in hopes of easily defending Alaska. Down south, the US begins to push into Baja California in hopes of having naval defense. Back up north, the Europeans and Canadians continue to push back the US until they're all the way back down to their border. Down south, Mexico, Central America, and South America managed to push the US out of Mexico, while up north, Canada and other European countries continue to push the US back. So this is what we have so far. We actually have the US winning so far, which is not going to last for long. They're about to completely capitulate. But from here on out, the US will not be making any more land gains, and it's just going to be a slow and painful death. So the first thing to happen is Canada taking back all of its occupied lands. From here, Russia and other Asian countries make a landing in Alaska. They maneuver through all of southern Alaska and even take over the Juneau area. From there, they swoop up into the mountains, and eventually Alaska falls. The first state to get invaded is Maine, as Canadians and Europeans start pushing in. From here, they continue to maneuver out through New England, taking over Vermont, New Hampshire, and other New England states. From here, they cross into New York and manage to take out the entire state. Eventually, a stalemate is established throughout Pennsylvania. While this is happening, some of the Asian and Oceanic countries start to push into Washington. Using the Cascade Mountains to their advantage, they take out all of Oregon and Washington's coast. Down south, the rest of America starts a push into Texas. They manage to wipe out major cities such as Austin and Houston, and all that's left is the lesser populated counties of northern Texas. Just a little bit west of here, the Battle of Los Angeles happens, and the US manages to hold out as they keep a hold of their currently most populated populated city. I say current because New York City is currently occupied. From here, some of the African and Asian countries make a landing in Florida, pushing up, taking important cities such as Miami, Tampa, and Jacksonville. Back on the west coast, the world makes a move to take out all of California. They do so successfully and manage to use the Cascade Mountains once again to their advantage. In the Great Lakes area, the world starts to push into Minnesota and Wisconsin. They take the panhandle of Michigan and start pushing down into Wisconsin. Over in Ontario, they make a push into Michigan and manage to take out all of the important cities there. So this is what the world's current occupation of the US looks like. So obviously the most populated areas of the US have been eliminated. Now the most populated areas are over here in the mid-Atlantic region, with places like Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and North Carolina having the most population. From here, US troops are starting to give up as they see no hope in this war. Obviously, if you're going against the world, you're probably going to lose. At this point, this is what the occupation looks like. So we have the West Coast gone, we have the South gone, and we have the Midwest and Northeast gone. From here, US troops are starting to surrender without the permission of the president, and the Europeans and Canadians make a push into Maryland and Virginia, eventually taking DC. From here, the United States of America surrenders and the world is the victor. I tried to make this video as realistic as possible. Now, I was kind of nice to the US, letting them push into Canada. In real life, I'm not sure how this would play out because, I mean, it's a very far-fetched scenario. When it comes to a peace treaty, we have the United States being ripped apart. First off, we have Canada taking over all of the Northeast and a part of Minnesota. They also get the tail of Alaska. Speaking of Alaska, they are given over to Russia. Down south, Mexico takes back all of its old land. In the Caribbean, Puerto Rico is given independence and becomes its own country. We have Europe occupying the southeast United States. And right here, we have a big chunk of land that is now controlled by a new government. Maybe it's a puppet of a government or something like that. Alternatively, we could have this where it's still a part of the US, but I don't think the world would be that nice to the US. I mean, it's possible, but this stuff right here is actually pretty useless other than like maybe Wisconsin and Minnesota. So I guess we could have this. Now, obviously, this would probably never happen. I don't know how every single country would get involved. I mean, I think we can get a good maybe 50 or 60 countries get involved, but having every single country, including the US's allies, is a little far-fetched. Now, let's just say that in some really, like, super far-fetched scenario, the US manages to somehow win. Now, this is not official. This is just like a DLC. You just purchase a DLC, and this is what you get. So if the US did win, first of all, dang, US got hands. But the land changes would include Alaska getting some land from Canada over here to better connect their tail. We have the new state of Vancouver. We have the new state of South Manitoba. We have a new state of Ontario. The new state of New Brunswick. The territory of Greenland. And finally, the territory of Cuba. Now with this, if the US were to win, obviously they would have a lot of power when it comes to the peace treaty. So they puppet the rest of Canada, they puppet the rest of Mexico, they puppet Hispania, they puppet Venezuela. Over in Europe, they puppet a part of France. In Africa, Liberia. In the Middle East, they occupy Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. Over in Asia, we have the Philippines, South China, and Japan. And that does it for the US's big victory here. They might take a little bit more in Africa, or they might not take anything at all. But of course, like I said, this is just a DLC, so this didn't really happen. Basically, they have land in every continent for more control and more influence over the countries around them. Basically, they're trying to prevent another world coalition against them. So that is going to do it for my USA versus the world video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I try to make it as realistic as possible. This is the exception. Usually all my other videos are supposed to be fictional and entertainable, but this one is supposed to have some realism behind it. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I really appreciate that, and it's showing me that you guys are enjoying these videos. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.